Thank you, George. Good afternoon. It is a great joy to be back with all of you today for the opening of the 218th Convocation of Bowdoin College. We begin with an invocation that will be offered by the Reverend Eduardo Passos Palmas, the director of the Rachel Lord Center for Religious and Spiritual Life at the college. I would ask that you remain standing through the invocation and then through the singing of America the Beautiful. Eduardo.
Please join me in a moment of reflection, meditation, or prayer. As you look to the beginning of your college dream and career, may you be surrounded with strength. Strength to get up every morning to study, work, and discover the world around you. Strength to carry the legacy and the new legacies that are being opened to you. Strength to do what at times seems impossible, and strength to embrace your journey at every turn. May you find joy. May you find joy in the trees in the quad, the tolling of the bells 4 times an hour, the cheers of your classmates in the fields, the dedicated and smiling faces of our staff, the first snow of the season, and the first buds in the spring. May you find joy in the laughter of your new friends and the voice of your professors. May you find joy in your classes and your dorms and new friendships and old passions and new adventures. May you find joy in the small tasks of everyday life, the reading, writing, solving, doing, memorizing, and the resting. And may you find courage. Courage to know your own sacred worth. Courage to fight for justice, for what is right, and for the way things should be. Courage to imagine a new reality and the freedom to dream a new world with peace for all. Courage to ask difficult questions, and even more courage to find out the answers. May you find the courage to be kind, loving, and compassionate towards all, to say hello to new friendships and possibilities, to be and exist completely and entirely as you are. Class of 2023, may your days here with us be full of blessing, awe, and inspiration. Amen.
Thank you, Eduardo. I'd now like to invite Christopher Brown and Lauren Weller, both of the class of 2020, and Anam Shah from the class of 2021 to the stage to lead us in the singing of America the Beautiful. George Lopez, our Beckwith artist in residence, will be on the piano, and you'll find the words on the back of your program.
Good afternoon. Today, I get to share voices from Bowdoin's past. I ask that you think about what the story I am about to share means for you and your role at Bowdoin, here in the present, as well as for the future. Virgil Logan grew up in Dayton, Ohio, the son of divorced parents. His father, a construction worker. His mother, a cook and housekeeper. He was big, nearly 6'5" and 200 pounds at age 17. Bowdoin's football and basketball coaches had their eyes on Virgil, but as his Bowdoin roommate, Bob Ives, remembers, while Virgil was a commanding and dynamic presence, he was the most uncoordinated person you'd ever meet. He was only coordinated in one area of his being, his voice. Virgil could speak on any topic and ended up winning just about every speaking contest there was. He was a leader. Everyone on campus knew who Virgil Logan was, and they respected him. But college wasn't always easy for Virgil. He struggled with math and science, something he attributed to an extremely low interest level, among other factors. Virgil was a student who did very well when he was engaged and interested in the subject matter, maybe not so much when he wasn't. High on Virgil's list of passions were human rights and human dignity, and that's where he channeled his energy and his dedication. This was a half-century ago, during the 1960s. The Vietnam War had the country and many college campuses in turmoil. In 1968, Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were both assassinated. In August of that year, riots convulsed the city of Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. A month later, Bowdoin's acting president, Athern Daggett, focused part of his remarks at Convocation on the ongoing civil rights movement. The world in which we live, he said, is today dominated by the sickness of our own society, which arises from the fact that a large element of our society has been denied its rightful place throughout history. In all of this, the college must take its part. King's death had been particularly difficult for Virgil. He idolized the slain civil rights leader and believed deeply in King's nonviolent approach. He and his roommate, Bob Ives, hatched up a plan to hitchhike from Brunswick, Maine to Atlanta, Georgia, to attend King's funeral. The day before we were planning to leave, Bob remembered, we received a call from the secretary of interim President Daggett saying he wanted to see us both immediately. We were a bit stunned and apprehensive that we had done something wrong. He greeted us and shared that he had learned through the Bowdoin grapevine that we were going to attend King's funeral and that we were planning on hitchhiking. Hitchhiking, he said twice. We slyly nodded in the affirmative. Well, he said, would you consider having Bowdoin purchase your plane tickets to Atlanta? And would you be willing to represent Bowdoin College at the funeral? Bob and Virgil accepted the offer and returned from the experience, as Bob put it, with a commitment and determination to work for peace, justice, and human rights. As a leader of the Bowdoin Undergraduate Civil Rights Organization, Virgil was already actively raising money for scholarship assistance for Black students, and he and other students were using their vacations to travel to inner city and Black neighborhoods to recruit applicants. They were determined to enroll more Black students, to bring Black faculty to Bowdoin, and to change the curriculum to reflect a more diverse history. We have begun to see ourselves as distinct forces within the college community, Virgil told a gathering at the chapel. The spring of 1968 and the following fall, Virgil was instrumental in forming the Afro-American Society at Bowdoin, known today as the Black Student Union. The idea was to make Black students more aware and prouder of their heritage, and to convey to others a better understanding of and appreciation for that heritage by emphasizing Black contributions to culture. In the spring of 1969, Virgil's senior year at Bowdoin, he and members of the Afro-American Society developed a proposal for the establishment of an Afro-American Center to serve as a focal location for the cultural, intellectual, and social activities of Black students. It had the full backing of then-President Roger Howell, who wrote, "It is increasingly apparent that much of an education we need, how great the gaps are in our knowledge and understanding, how much of the rich and living heritage of our country white Americans are ignorant of. The Afro-American Society, which already has done so much for Bowdoin College, has much to teach us. I hope very sincerely that the establishment of a center at Bowdoin will aid in this very necessary process of education." The center would open the following year in what is now the Rustworm Center on College Street. Later this semester, in November, the college will celebrate a half-century of multiculturalism and scholarship through the Africana Studies program, the African American Society, and the John Brown Rustworm African American Center. Sadly, the former student who started it all won't be there for the celebration. Virgil Logan passed away in 1989 at the age of 42, a victim of the AIDS epidemic. In his junior year, Virgil was awarded the Franklin D. Roosevelt Cup as the undergraduate whose vision, humanity, and courage most contribute to making Bowdoin a better college. At his commencement in 1969, he was recognized as the senior who has shown the highest quality of conduct and character. Virgil would be awarded one of Bowdoin's first 2 Watson Fellowships and would later earn his master's degree at Harvard, devoting his career to education in urban environments. Virgil was also a poet with a volume of poems titled, "How Does a Whisper Catch Fire?" Just a few weeks before his death, the Bowdoin governing boards considered the question when they voted to establish a scholarship fund in Virgil's honor. How does a whisper catch fire? The answer, they wrote, must be in part through lives devoted to the brotherhood and sisterhood of humankind. I hope members of the class of 2023 will take these words to heart. Make the most of your years here. Be yourselves and make Bowdoin a better college. Be well, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Janet. It was lovely. As we open officially the academic year, it is our custom at Invocation to invite a member of the faculty to offer insight into an issue of importance. Professor of Government Laura Henry teaches courses on contemporary Russian politics, Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union, environmental politics, and on social movements and civil society. And this afternoon, Professor Henry joins us to talk about the concept of the noosphere, the realm of human thought as a geological force that shapes the planet, and how it has come to become a source of hope for some in the environmental movement. In her talk, Professor Henry shares how her initial encounter with the idea of the noosphere revealed impediments to learning, and yet also provided a better understanding on the importance of optimism in the face of very difficult challenges. Please join me in welcoming Professor of Government Laura Henry.
Thank you, President Rose. Good afternoon, first-year students, colleagues, members of the campus community. I'm so pleased to speak to you at the start of the academic year, this energizing moment when we reflect on what we have already learned and anticipate what we're going to explore in the months ahead. In the spirit of self-reflection, I want to tell you about an idea that I've wrestled with on and off for several decades, the noosphere. In the 1920s, the Russian scientist Vladimir Ivanovich Vernadsky, working with two French scholars, identified a new stage of the Earth's development, the noosphere, meaning the sphere of human thought. Vernadsky recognized that humans had become, and I quote, a large-scale geological force on Earth. In the noosphere, Vernadsky asserted, the development of human consciousness and collective reason would play a fundamental role in the evolutionary dynamics of the Earth's basic geochemical processes. So why do I highlight the noosphere here today, especially as a political scientist? It's because the concept of the noosphere, or at least the popular imaginary of the noosphere in contemporary Russia, was a stumbling block for me when I wasn't much older than the first-year students here ready to start their Bowdoin education. By grappling with the idea of the noosphere, an unfamiliar approach to understanding the world, I had to face certain self-imposed barriers to my ability to learn. So today, I want to take you back in time to an era long before some of you were born, but not such a distant past for others up here in the front. The year is 1993, and I am a freshly minted college graduate. The Soviet Union had disintegrated only a year and a half earlier, and I had the good fortune to be working and traveling in Russia to research up close the dramatic changes in the country's political and economic systems. And I was ready. I had been interdisciplinary before being interdisciplinary was cool. I had majored in political science and history. I'd taken courses in Russian language and literature, as well as economics and environmental studies. And I wanted to understand how people adapted to change following the collapse of the communist regime. In particular, I wanted to see how citizens would take advantage of greater freedoms of speech and association to address persistent environmental problems, a legacy of Soviet industrialization. Naively, I intended to be a student of citizens unleashed and in action, no longer constrained by a single political ideology. And I met people in schools, community centers, government agencies, wherever I could. This effort led me to many interesting spaces and inspiring people, from an environmental education club that planted trees in Vladivostok to an ecological apartment building in St. Petersburg where worms busily composted food waste in the basement. But I had more to learn from these people than to offer in return. I volunteered when I could be of use. For example, despite my extremely limited technological skills, I followed the English language instructions to connect newly purchased modems to computers that would allow these citizen activists to communicate with their counterparts around the world. And it was invigorating. However, my interest in action ran up against the brutal realities of daily life in Russia at this time. In the 1990s, most Russian citizens were focused on survival. I had arrived as hyperinflation and disillusionment began to set in. Life savings disappeared in a matter of weeks, the price of even basic foods rose steeply, and employment became precarious for the first time in modern Russian history. Citizens had gained new political rights, but their social rights, like free housing and healthcare, were eroding. And the political arena was unstable. Violent struggle erupted between the president and the parliament just months after I arrived. So how could one be optimistic about the future in the midst of this turmoil? How could the environmentalists I met sustain their commitment during what was in some ways a liberating, but also a deeply disorienting and even traumatic period? Even now, I marvel that so many people gave generously of their time to speak to an eager young American. Over hot tea in many overheated rooms, in response to my questions about their future plans and their policy options, a number of these environmentalists responded in a more philosophical vein. I wanted to talk action, and they wanted to talk ideas. Of all of the philosophical digressions in these conversations, the most common had to do with the noosphere. Many of the Russians who I met sought a deeper understanding of their situation and a source of optimism in the writings of Vladimir Vernadsky. Vernadsky lived from 1863, just a few years after the emancipation of Russia's serfs, to 1945, just months before the Soviets and Allies defeated the Nazis in World War II. Despite my dutiful interdisciplinarity, I had never heard of Vernadsky. But Vernadsky was one of the founders of the field of biogeochemistry. But like many Russian scientists, his work transcended the traditional boundaries of the natural sciences. Vernadsky identified the noosphere as the Earth's third stage of development, after the geosphere and the biosphere. He recognized that humankind was becoming a mighty and ever-growing geological force. By now, we are used to the idea that we humans are starting to profoundly affect fundamental aspects of the Earth and its climate system, chronicled in a growing literature on the Anthropocene. For many of us, this is a source of deep pessimism. We think of plastics in the ocean, persistent organic pollutants in the Arctic, greenhouse gas emissions globally. We are indeed changing the planet, and likely not for the better. But for the Russians that I met, they were talking about something different than the Anthropocene, something both deeper and more deliberate, a way of harnessing the power of human reason more intentionally. These environmentalists valued Vernadsky's concept of the noosphere not only for its scientific insight, but its approach to understanding the human capacity to alter the relationship between society and our planetary systems. Many of them explained to me that the changes in Russian society, despite economic dislocation and human suffering, signaled a new opportunity, the possibility of a shift from material values to spiritual or ethical values. The difficult post-Soviet transformation could portend a remaking of the human relationship with nature. I will admit to you that over my cups of hot tea, I waited impatiently for these explications of the power of the noosphere to come to an end. In part, I was confused. Despite my interdisciplinarity, I had little experience with philosophy. Everyone, you should take philosophy. I didn't do it, but you should do it. And I often found myself out of depth linguistically, reaching the limits of my Russian language skills. I was eager for the moment when we could discuss real things. To me, the noosphere sounded like dreaming instead of acting. I thought the important stuff was what people did in their daily lives, not what they thought or believed in. It took an embarrassing amount of time for me to realize that for Russian environmentalists, the noosphere was a real thing, and maybe it was the real thing. I was slow to see that the noosphere was a source of hope in the midst of chaos, not just changing laws and regulations. The noosphere allowed people to continue to imagine a better future in a brutal present. Faith in the noosphere is what kept these environmentalists engaged with their fellow citizens, talking, planning, and beginning the difficult process of envisioning alternatives to how we live on this planet. I had so much to learn from my Russian interlocutors and from Vernadsky, and I'll share just a few of these lessons. The first lesson is slow down and listen. Your confidence that you already know what matters, what's important in explaining the world, will crowd out your ability to hear what matters to others. Second, that really uncomfortable feeling of being perplexed and confused and out of your depth, it's not a feeling that should be beaten back with certainties or hasty conclusions. Instead, let it inspire humility. It should be embraced as a painful but essential part of learning. Third, context matters. We're all shaped by our political and social circumstances in which we live in ways that we cannot understand, even if we consider ourselves to be contrarians or critics of mainstream thought. For example, I believed I had rejected post-Cold War triumphalism, so prevalent in the United States at that time, that said, we won the Cold War and our system is the best. But in fact, these ideas did shape my expectations that with the disintegration of the Soviet regime, Americans and Russians would become more similar, with similar motivations to act politically and solve problems. The noosphere challenged cultural assumptions I didn't even know I had. The optimism of Russian activists came not from mimicking Western ideas or strategies, but from a philosophical tradition of their own. So when I again reflect on these key moments of learning in my life, moments of growth and insight often follow periods that I'm embarrassed to recall. Stages of life when I dwelled too much on what I already knew and too little on what I still had to discover. I've learned the most when my capacity for listening and empathy were greatest, when curiosity outweighed my desire to come to a conclusion. In learning about the noosphere, I was given a gift, an alternative mental framework, one that I might still approach skeptically, but that would engage and push and challenge me to think about the relationship between societies and ecological systems, and one that's only become more relevant as the years have passed. In the midst of the misery and despair of World War II, Vernadsky wrote, "Now we live in the period of a new geological evolutionary change in the biosphere. We are entering the noosphere. This new elemental geological process is taking place at a stormy time in the epic of a destructive world war. But the important fact is that our democratic ideals be in tune with these geological processes, with the laws of nature, and with the noosphere. Therefore, we may face the future with confidence. It is in our hands. We will not let it go." Vernadsky's message is as important today as it was during World War II. We have the power to shape our fate and the fate of our planet. I wish you all an excellent academic year. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That was really beautiful, really interesting. I would now like to invite to the stage Amanda Cassano from the class of 2022 and Ethan Hill, class of 2021, along with George, to perform today's musical interlude, the second movement of Brahms' trio in E flat major, Opus 40. Amanda, Ethan, George, thank you. That was beautiful. So it is good to be with you to begin another year at our college. To my faculty and staff colleagues, welcome back. I hope the summer was relaxing, refreshing, that you got time with family and friends. Thank you for everything that you have done and will do for our students, for one another, and for our college. To our returning students, welcome back. I hope the summer was fabulous. It is great to see all of you and to begin another year with you. To our transfer and exchange students, we are delighted that you are continuing your education here with us, and we welcome you to the Bowdoin family. And to our 499 first-year students, the awesome class of 2023, each of whom I have now met over the last 2 days, today marks the start of a remarkable journey for you that at its best will include successes, challenges, new ideas and possibilities, engagement, discovery, and ultimately accomplishment that you likely never thought possible. Only a few weeks ago, we closed a great academic year with commencement for the class of 2019 and a reunion weekend that brought back nearly 2,000 alumni and friends for 3 days of celebration and renewal. And then since then, as it is every year, it was a very busy summer. Faculty pursued their research, their writing, performance, course development. Students engaged in research, study, or service here, in town, in Maine, around the country, and across the world. And of course, there were jobs of all manner. And our staff was busy preparing the campus and our programs for the beginning of another year. We welcomed 28 new tenure-track, visiting, or postdoc faculty to this amazing community of scholars and teachers. Now, over the past several years on this occasion, I've offered topics on the challenge of race in America and how it plays out a bit on our campus, the essential role of a great liberal arts education and the centrality of faculty to that effort, and where the K report will likely be leading us. But today I'd like to speak more personally to the class of 2023. I know that for you it's been nonstop since you arrived here on Tuesday and moved into your rooms. And this is both one of the most exciting moments in your life and one filled, understandably, with anxiety and uncertainty. One session has followed another since you arrived, all filled with important and useful information, but drinking from a fire hose probably doesn't begin to describe it. What's been interesting to me in observing the sessions that you've been in is in the absence of any coordination among folks, there are some themes that have been repeated in the thoughts that have been shared with you over the last few days. I put my thoughts together a few weeks ago, and I'm pleased to see how well they fit with what others have been telling you, in particular from you all on Sunday night at the convening dinner and in the editorial and the orientation issue of the Orient. Now, tomorrow for you, college begins. And it will almost certainly be a remarkable 4 years for you, a time to stretch yourself, to explore, to triumph, to fail, learn, grow, and challenge. You will quicken the pace in the lifelong journey of discovering who you will be. Now, you all know, as we say in Maine, that you are wicked smart. And you're pretty good. You're actually pretty great at all kinds of things. It's how you got here, what makes you particularly awesome. But in general, you are not very good at one thing: asking for help. And that needs to change. An inescapable and important part of the journey that begins tomorrow are the decisions you will make and the challenges you will face. Many, maybe most, will be familiar and modest and manageable. But increasingly, you will feel the weight of these challenges and the decisions facing you. They'll cover the waterfront: academic, job, social, personal. Very few are actually going to alter the course of your life. Very few will be inalterable. Life isn't like that. But many will be important and increasingly difficult. And the big challenges and the important decisions do not lend themselves to easy answers and clean outcomes. They require careful thought and an understanding that you can rarely have it all. Something gets left behind, choices need to be made. And these moments will often test your character. So make your decisions with integrity. Know yourself, what matters to you, what centers you. Your values should drive your decisions. Recognize the ramifications of your decisions for yourself and the effect they have on others. And own your decisions and live with the consequences. As I said to you on the steps of the museum on Saturday evening, You were admitted to Bowdoin in no small measure because of your character, and I have no doubt that it will serve you well and be strengthened here. So don't seek the easy way out, the short-term expedient answer. Seek the right answer, the one that you can live with and for which you can accept the consequences. Hard decisions will test you. You start from a very good place and you will get even better. This is the process of owning who you are and who you want to be and developing the skills to navigate the challenges and the decisions on that path. It's hard at times, but it's exciting and it's part of life. So at this point, you are asking yourself, okay, but why are you telling me this? The first is so that you recognize that you are not alone. All of you sitting here this afternoon are in the same boat, as are your fellow students who are sophomores and juniors and seniors, as is everyone in this room and everyone on this campus, myself included. These decisions and challenges and moments test us all. And second, there is help everywhere, but you need to ask for it. And there it is, the thing you're not so good at. You need to develop the skill and the disposition to make seeking help a regular part of your routine, both here and in life after Bowdoin. Get data and information from the people who have it. Get advice from those with experience and wisdom. Find a shoulder to cry on. Do a gut check. Get someone to give you honest and direct feedback. Don't look to others to make the decisions for you. Look to others to help you make the best decisions that you can make. Be wary of those who have easy answers. Go to those who have your best interests in mind, who will give it to you straight and will tell you what you may not want to hear. Of course, you should seek out your family and your friends, but also seek out your faculty. Res Life, Student Affairs, your classmates, any and all of us. You'll be amazed by how much we want to help and by how much help others can be. Take in what they have to offer and then go off and make the best decisions you can. You won't always get it right, but you'll make better decisions and you'll manage the downside better. This is a generous and thoughtful and caring community. Reach out and engage with those who might be able to help you. And this is particularly true for those very difficult moments that life throws at us, moments of deep personal stress. This is when asking for help is essential because no one weathers these times alone. And this is where the Bowdoin community shines. Now, it sounds kind of easy and obvious, but it's not, particularly for a group like you. You've accomplished so much. You're here at Bowdoin. And the idea that you're not totally in command of yourself and your environment is seen as some sort of shortcoming or failure. And that is simply bogus. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, quite to the contrary. It is a sign of great strength and of self-assurance. And this is the place to do it, because this is a community like no other. So for everyone, as we begin our 218th academic year, I hope that for you it is a year filled with deeply satisfying work, with continued discovery, that you enjoy good health, you experience the joy of family and friends and the amazing bonds of the Bowdoin community. And I now declare our college to be in session. Thank you. Following Convocation, I invite all of our faculty and staff to the lawn at Cleveland House for a reception to welcome the new faculty and staff to Bowdoin. And for our students, at 5 p.m. at the Farley Fieldhouse is the annual lobster bake, so make sure you get yourself there. I'd like to thank our musicians, George Lopez, Amanda Casano, Ethan Hill, Christopher Brown, Lauren Weller, and Anam Shaw for sharing their incredible talents with us this afternoon. And I'd like to invite George, who's here, and our singers back to the stage to lead us in the singing of Ray's songs to Bowdoin. Please stand if you are able, and I would ask you to remain standing until the recessional has left the theater. Thank you.